Good morning and welcome to Sunrise. I'm Nelta Igbe. Yes, today I sit alone. Alera is not here, but she'll be here next week. But let's leave Alera for a moment and talk about you. How are you today? How was your week? Hectic? Calming? Difficult? Challenging? Beautiful? Whichever way you look at it, you're breathing. Whichever way you want to look at it. Some way, somehow, something good happened. And so it's worth giving a few seconds to say thank you to your creator, to your maker, to say, hey, thank you for this. But beyond that, so we all woke up to this news of someone we all love, the Black Panther. Yeah, he passed. Apparently, he had been working in between surgeries and bouts of chemotherapy. He had been ill, diagnosed with colon cancer. Well, he's passed on. And someone asked me a question. So what will happen to his character should those that made that film want to continue maybe another? What will happen to his character? I wouldn't know, but they'll find a way around it. But having said that, yesterday also we heard about the helicopter crash in Lagos. Fortunately, 3 people lost their lives. But the issue of safety is very paramount. I was there yesterday at that crash site, and I was looking at a lot of people who came out there to see what was happening. Why do we happen to always gather when things like that happen? Is it to help, or to take a video, or to take a picture, or to just stand around? Because looking at everybody standing there, no sense of social distancing whatsoever. No mask, nothing. Even with the directives, with the protocols that are out there every day, wear a mask everywhere you're going, use your hand sanitizer, social distance, nothing of the sort was there. Everyone was just gathered together, both the spectators and those who were trying to do one thing or the other, the security officials. The security officials had their masks. Most of them had their masks. And the aviation officials had their masks as well. But a lot of people didn't wear masks. But there was nothing like social distancing. How do we manage situations like that? How? Did you have to be there is the question. Some people say, yes, I had to see for myself. Okay, but having seen, do you have to stay? Safety is paramount. The truth is that things happen around us every day. But how safety conscious are we? How much of safety mentality do we have? Are we even thinking about it? You walk into a house, cables everywhere, sharp edges everywhere. You just walk past. You don't stop to put things right or to educate those around. Say, hey, say this. It could be dangerous. Please be careful around here. What am I trying to say? We all have a responsibility to us and to those around us. If they will not take responsibility for themselves, we should take responsibility for them, because whatever they do is going to affect us. We always talk about driving in Lagos, for instance. Safety conscious driving will mean that I will drive for me and for the other man. So if the other man needs or the other person is not being responsible, I would have to be responsible for both of us. So that's the one word I want to bring out to us today. Safety, health, both for you and for those around you. Just take a few seconds, for instance, right now, and look around you. Something might be missing. Something might not be in place. Can it be changed? Can you do something about it? Can you make a phone call to find out how that person is the last time you saw him or her? Whether they got home in time or got home well. Are they safe? Are they healthy? All these things point to our humanity. So think about it as we take this look at what we have lined up on the show today. Are many. So we're going to start out looking at electricity, mass metering program, electricity. That's what we're going to be starting with. Then we will look at beating the coming recession. That's the economy. Will be the next thing we'll be looking at. And then we'll go on to look at the digital quality of life. Wow, that should be interesting, the digital quality of life. And of course, the artist of the week. and she is a she. But you will enjoy what she's going to be doing. So just make yourself comfortable. A cup of tea, a cup of water, whatever it is that makes you feel comfortable. And we'll be back in a moment. Just stay with us.
And I'm grateful for your grace.
Thank you for staying with us. So during the week, President Muhammadu Buhari gave directives on the commencement of a nationwide mass metering and the end to estimated billing. This is great news for many Nigerians who have had to pay for estimated bills and epileptic power supply over the years. Now, some of them will tell you that, I mean, imagine a one-bedroom apartment, I pay as much as 10,000 naira for lights that many times I don't see. Well, hopefully that will come to an end after this directive. But today we'll take a look at how effective this directive will be. Will it work out? Are there any clogs in the wheel? Hopefully not, but we will see how that would work out. So to help us look at this matter, we have Muhyiddin Ibrahim, Executive Secretary, Electricity Meter Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Also here is Duro Shola Omegbenigun, who's the CEO of Integrated Resources Limited. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
In the course of the segment, we will be talking to Yemi Oke, who's an associate professor of energy and electricity law. He'll be joining us in the course of the conversation. So let me start with Muhyiddin.
Yeah.
So how were you happy when you heard that directive?
Yeah, it was really a sharing news. I was really happy, and all the members of the association, they were equally very happy and delighted. And we just hope the implementation will be very right.
Were you delighted because it's helping more for you guys?
Absolutely. Aside from bringing more money, it's going to be a win-win situation.
How?
If you ask me. Beautiful. One, it's going to make the meter manufacturers to go back to business and produce for Nigerians. It's going to make an average Nigerian to have meters in their various homes. So then it's also going to make the discos to be also very busy. Then aside from that, it's going to produce jobs for the teeming unemployed if we get it right. So that's why I said it's going to be a win-win situation. So what we need to do is just to think outside the box and get it right.
Okay.
And I bet you Nigeria will be better for it.
Okay. Well, we'll still come to that. Omobanigo, what do you think?
It's a very welcome development. There's been the interest to get mass metering right over the years. But there's a need, a very strong need at this point in time to make sure that all the stakeholders that are involved in getting actual mass metering to happen are made to work together, and they harmonize all the policies in government to make sure that it's not a little too late at every stage, because that has been a big issue in the past.
You know, I was going to ask you, why didn't we get it right before now? And what's going to change? But hold on, we've been joined by Professor Yemi Oke, Associate Professor of Energy and Electricity Law, who joined us from Abeokuta via Skype. Prof, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a while. So this new directive by the president to end everything estimated billing and ensure that every Nigerian is metered, how do you take that news?
Well, thank you very much for that important question. One, it's not the president of Nigeria that will end estimated billing in the power sector. That's one. Two, the existing structure in place, talking about regulatory instruments and the recent MAP, Meter Access Provider Scheme, are meant to gradually phase out estimated billing. Inherent in the policy is the fact that those who are not already metered will be able to pay that their bills are capped, sort of, to continue to pay a particular fixed amount of money until they are metered. By the time federal government is now making policy declaration, the way it's been reported in the media, the federal government will stop estimated billing. That's not going to happen. We've had series of similar pronouncements by the federal government. That's not the way to go about it. The way to go about it is to empower existing meter manufacturers by giving them good incentives to be able to manufacture meters for Nigerians. Two, to encourage Nigerians to pay for electricity consumed. We still have a lot of problems in instances where meters are also installed. I'll be honest with you, a lot of Nigerians are still bypassing. Now, that's for a fact, and that's not good for the industry. So the discos and other operators are also growing under heavy burdens of course, liquidity, as it were. But I can tell you that the decision or the policy statement of the federal government to stop estimated billing is not going to happen. It's not realistic unless and until government takes deliberate steps to empower existing infrastructure, meaning the discos are already under a statutory mandate to do a number of things, but there isn't an enabling environment for them to be able to do that. For instance, meter asset provider scheme, they moved from CAPME. CAPME is a kind of scheme, a credit scheme that enables consumers to advance money for the purposes of meter. And over time, that gets deducted from their bills. That has been phased out now. We now have MAP. MAP is even not as effective because they are meant to install meters over a number of days, perhaps 1 month. But we still have long queues. A lot of Nigerians who have signified their intention to have meters installed, they still not been installed. Two, the consumers are still being made to pay for those meters, contrary to expectations. And
Mr.
government making...
Mr. Okay, just hold your thoughts there. Let me come back to these other players in here who are actually very hands-on when it comes to the meter thing. So let me find out from them. The question of, he talks about incentives. He says, contrary to what you said, that this is a good thing. He doesn't think it will work because the infrastructure that was there before this directive came is still there. It's not changed. So why do you think it will change?
Well, don't forget that there are various stakeholders in the sector. We have the meter manufacturers. They are ready. We are super ready even before this pronouncement came. So I think at a time like this, we should just be optimistic that it can work. And that's why I said it depends on the implementation. If the implementation is right, why not if not? It will definitely work. Laws are made for human beings, and the policies are to be also implemented by human beings. It is because of policies of my sort that has not really worked in the past. You know, it is the human beings, the human factor, the human element. So if that is taken off, definitely it will work. No, because a lot of people are suffering. You understand? And so once the meters are there and they are provided for people, definitely it will work.
Once the meters are there and they are provided for people, so people will still pay for the meters?
They will pay for the meters, and that is the value they will get at the end of the day.
Okay, so what happens to all the schemes? You had the CAPME, you had the MAP. So
that is why I said it is implementation that did not make it work. So supposing, and that falls on the tables of the regulatory body, for God's sake, and for crying out loud. So if the regulatory body do what it's supposed to do as at when due, it will work. Why is it that...
The question then is, if you say the people will still pay, contrary to what Prof is saying about making people pay for these meters, the meter still belongs to the discos, right?
Yes.
The meters belong to the discos.
Yes.
So if I pay for a meter which belongs to the disco, why should it belong to a disco? Why shouldn't it be?
Because the challenge is that the discos are saying that there is no money to procure all these meters, and that was why MAP came in the first instance. But there was funding challenge.
But even as it came, people are still paying for it.
People are
and
still,
many of them haven't gotten their meters.
Because there was no fund to finance it. The financing was a challenge. And so people paid, and over a number of years or time, they will be deducting it from their token. That was the agreement, and it was working in some area. But along the line, it crashed too.
Okay, Drusilla, this thing, first, Professor Oke says it will not work. He says it will work. It's implementation. The question of the meter, the incentives here for the manufacturers and even the people who use, and the discos, do you see them in line?
Do I see them?
Do you see incentives to make this work? I mean, for years we've been battling this back and forth. Meter, don't meter, estimated billing, no estimated billing. He has said the federal government cannot end estimated billing if the infrastructure on ground doesn't change.
Both parties have some points, but I share a cautious optimism that it can work. And I believe it will work if all those policies that have been put in place are well implemented, and more importantly, if the stakeholders come together and harmonize their policies, the macroeconomic conditions are made to work with the policies, and incentives are created in such a way that those macroeconomic conditions provide the necessary platforms for the policies to work. In particular, exchange rate.
Okay.
It moves, capped meter prices versus exchange rate.
Okay.
How does that work?
Okay, we'll take it up from
Yes,
there. Capped
yeah.
meter prices versus exchange rate. We'll look at that when we'll come back from this break. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. And we have this comment here from Osho Sam. He says, we've been battling this years with metering because of the corruption in the power sector. There was a time when prepaid meters were given to households before payment. What stops us from first having meters free while we are debited from our tokens, which is what you referred to earlier.
Totally.
But you were saying, before we went to that break, you were talking about the macroeconomic situation. Example, exchange rate, and then a capped electricity pricing. You think it will not work?
It won't. That does not work, really.
So where does that, what you've said now, how does that relate to what he said earlier about the laws are meant for the people, not the people for the laws? Laws and policies are meant for the people, not the people for the law.
Yeah, laws and policies are meant for the people, but those policies have to rest on realistic macroeconomic conditions. So capped meter prices, fluctuating exchange rates, even add on to that, custom duty variations after contracts have been signed and prices have been determined. Now, all of that, what it does is that it you get the margins decline, diminish, and if there are no margins, how do you attract long-term financing to come into the sector? And part of the long-term financing finances immediate cash procurement of meters, as well as installmental payment of meters, which I believe is what the caller has referred to. Now, installmental payments require also a certain kind of interest component on it. Now, NEC has done something in the interest of the consumers, which is fair enough, a fixed, also a capped interest rate. Now, if there is a capped interest rate, then it is essential that whoever is going to lease out meters under that capped interest rate must be getting his rates lower than that rate for it to work. The capped rate is 21%. We all know what the commercial rate is in Nigeria, okay? So we would say, okay, well, let's not take the money from Nigeria. Let's bring in the money from overseas, foreign investment. Now, how's foreign investment going to come in when the exchange rate is not determined? The exchange rate moves. They are not sure that they will be able to export their capital. When the capital comes in, exchange rate moves, the meter price is capped. How is he going to get back his money at the end of the day when the meter price, funds comes in? So these are issues that affect the ability of consumers to get the meters. Part of what happened in Capney was there was a fixed price, exchange rates moved, it was not possible to sell at that price again, Capney had to crash. Then you had to go renegotiate with the discos. If you want the meters, this is how much we can do it. Are you ready to buy it? Yeah, the discos did some transactions, they went ahead, but they have limited financial capacity as well. Therefore, they were limited.
This picture you paint is like the picture that the nation's trying to move away from, where residents of an area buy the meter or buy the transformer that's used to connect power to their homes, and then they are still charged electricity bill. There's no incentive for the people to own this infrastructure. So at the end of the day, you're telling people to pay you like 2-3 times for what they are not seeing. Professor, okay, this whole thing of imbalance here and there, incentives, unstable macroeconomic situation, and then the weight of it appears to be resting on the citizenry. How do we leave that place? We'll come back to Professor Yemioke, who is in Abeokuta. We'll come back to you there. But let's come back here. This whole thing, you put in resources, you invest your money, and then you get to tend to import some of the things you use for your manufacturing.
Components, basically.
You import some of those components. Is there no other alternative? Because I'm sure you're also looking at the weight of input plus output.
Yeah, absolutely there are other alternatives. But the unfortunate thing is that the system or where we find ourselves is not conducive for production, as it were. But if you ask me, this is really the time for the government to really look critically into the metering gap and industrialize the sector. Because as we speak, we have over 6 million metering gap in the country, meaning we have more than 6 million people that really needs meter. Unfortunately, they have not been metered. So this is the time to come around the table and think critically outside the box.
When you say government should look at it and industrialize, I thought you said the manufacturers are ready to go.
The manufacturers are there, but let me use a case study. Hitherto before the liberalization of the telecom sector, we were in a cul-de-sac, as it were. But when it was liberalized, we had a lot of jobs. And today, everybody is on his own, and things are moving. It's the same thing. The government should look critically into that sector too. And once the government gets it right, it will create so many opportunities for the Nigerians and even for foreigners. And we can even now start exporting the meters. So now, the manufacturers in Nigeria, there are quite a number of them, they are ready. In fact, they have been producing meters for the nation. But the challenge is that the implementation of these meters, so there is a gap. The discourse will be saying they don't have money. So how do you juxtapose that based on what these people are producing? And they need to get their money and get everything right. So that's why I said the government also needs to come into it, liberalize it. At a time like this, we need to be looking for solution, permanent solution.
You talked about when the telecom industry was deregulated,
yeah,
so that everybody could run.
Yeah.
There was a structure, and then. So what if, even as Tunde Ario is saying here, he says the problem is Nigerians are ready to pay for meters, but he says government only needs to allow them own what they pay. I mean, would you want to pay for something and not own it?
Well, that's why I said the government really needs to come into that sector and do sort of an holistic approach and preferred solution to it. Because now, the meters are there, the discos will be claiming ownership even when you pay and what they're supposed to provide for you. So in a situation like that, we need to get it right, get a good policy, get everything right. Then all the stakeholders and the players can play very well, and everybody will smile. That is what I mean by a win-win situation. But in a situation now that the discourse, I'm sorry to say, perhaps they are happy that the meters are not there. They give you estimated bills at the end of the month, and you'll be forced to pay. If you don't pay, they come, they disconnect you.
So we're back to what Professor K was saying, that this policy will not work because the infrastructure has not changed.
Why I said it can work is that if it is well implemented and regulated, policies work in other climes. Why is it that this can't work in Nigeria? And perhaps because I'm from the private sector, I'm always very optimistic. And now that the government has made a pronouncement that end this thing, why can't they end it? So if they don't end it, meaning they are benefiting from it, and which is an open secret that they know that they are actually benefiting from it, because you're actually paying for what you didn't use,
Okay,
which
Mr.
is not
Okay.
good.
It's okay. I understand we have you back now. So that question I asked you earlier, is there a way we can come out of this so that it's not a question of the people are for the laws, not the laws for the people?
Thank you very much. This issue is not whether law made for people or people made for law. The actual point which Nigerians should know is that we've been having extreme policy somersault. I've been having something that will amount to political manifestos being read by way of policy, that those are not practically implementable. For instance, Nigerians ought not to pay for meters. Meters are like, they're just devices to connect customers. If you are interested in selling electricity to me, you install meters and then you can connect me to your installation so that I can pay for services rendered to me. But the way things are manifested in Nigeria, it's difficult for government to fund metering. Government has not been forthcoming in providing necessary incentive for meter manufacturers. The third point is the discos are also playing games with issues of metering. I've said that severally, even in your studios there. I want to assume it might not be in the interest of discos for people to be metered. Otherwise, they should be in the forefront of making meters available to customers and consumers alike so that they can be appropriately billed. But we have some fundamental challenges as a country. We don't even know how many homes we have in Nigeria. We don't even know how many homes are currently metered. We don't even know how many homes are not metered. We don't even have statistics as to how many homes are bypassing meters, how many homes are connected to a particular grid. We have overlapping grids, like some segment of Ogun, they still pay to Ikeja Disco as against Ibadan Disco. We still have a number of things that we need to sort out. We have reputable meter manufacturers in Nigeria, and I visited a number of their factories. They have meters in abundance. Guess what? Discos are not fully sufficiently patronizing these manufacturers. They insist on so-called smart meters, as if Nigerian manufacturers are so incapable of manufacturing smart meters. Smart meters takes XYZ to produce. Where are the Nigerian banks giving them financial backings to do that? Where are the sovereign guarantees for them to be able to borrow, to access funding from overseas to produce or manufacture smart meters for Nigerians? I've mentioned politics of metering several times, and that is what is playing out. The policy, the declaration of the federal government is at best a manifesto to me. That's where I see it. Apologies, because they are not going to back that up with financial or logistical incentives to enable meter manufacturers to produce or manufacture meters for Nigeria, be it smart or not so smart meters. There are homes in Nigeria, all they need is
Prof, that declaration by the president also included what's called an import levy waiver on these meters and whatever that will be imported to help make metering a lot easier. Well, isn't that something good to say, okay, that's like an added advantage?
Thank you. The way to go is government should have no business in the business of metering. This is a sector that is privatized. But we seem to be spending even much more in the supposedly privatized power sector than we were doing even when it was under the old PACN and NEPA. Why? Government is funding GENCOs, government is giving incentives to DISCO, government is funding TCN, government is even now over subsidizing the power sector, despite over subsidizing the petroleum sector. No country can thrive, even not even pre or post-COVID era. It's not realistic. I'm being realistic here. All government needs to do is to encourage those who are in the business of importing or manufacturing meters. Let the incentive be channeled to them directly. MAP will source meters from them and install. Then DISCOs should bring available data, present it, so that we know how many homes are not metered, how many homes are metered. They will now determine the suitability of a particular brand of meter to be installed in those homes. But government doesn't even have what it takes now, because we have Siemens. Siemens is on ground. There are a lot of issues around that. Then we have Asura now that I read in the daily today that federal government is trying to restructure the obligations under the Asura project. Government is spending so much in the power sector and we're not getting value for it. So I will assume the meter manufacturers will now be key players to implement this policy, assuming that the government is now really seriously sincere. They should summon a meeting of the meter manufacturers and other stakeholders and let whatever incentive go directly to them. Whatever guarantees they have should go to reputable meter manufacturers. The association is there.
Okay, all right. The question then is, has your association been called in for a meeting as regards incentives, as regards how you're going to take this forward? Because he said something else. He talked about the fact that the DISCOs don't patronize you. Plus, the incentives that government's talking about now are not coming directly to the manufacturers. Maybe there are middlemen in between and all of that. So has your association been called into a meeting?
Well, at the moment, the association has not been formally called for a meeting with respect to the incentives. But I can tell you authoritatively that most of our members are being patronized, especially those ones that are manufacturing, because there are classes of members. Those ones who are manufacturing smart meters that you can use remotely from anywhere and recharge. Then what Professor was saying can be overcome with technology. And some of the manufacturers, they have the technology to dictate when a meter is bypassed from any parts.
But is it running? Is the technology
it's
being
working,
implemented?
but the technology is there. Even because the manufacturers, some of them have gone far and they can provide solutions to metering challenges in Nigeria. The unfortunate thing is that some of the DISCOs won't cooperate with them because they are independent and there are many. You understand?
Okay.
So
we'll come back
some of the issues Prof raised can actually be solved through technology. And we have them here in Nigeria. But we don't
come
believe in
back to look at
ourselves.
technology.
That's the challenge we have.
When we come back from this, we'll look at technology and data as a means to solving this. Because one of our viewers, Igmosa, says, piecemeal approach to the power sector will only achieve fragments. We need to look at the sector as a whole. So look at that when we come back from this break. Just stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're still looking at this matter of the new policy of government to say that and by the president, read out by the National Electricity Regulatory Commission, that the President Muhammadu Buhari directed the commencement of nationwide mass metering as part of efforts to end arbitrary and estimated billing. Again, some people will be rejoicing. I know someone who will be very glad. Oh, finally, I stay in a one-bedroom apartment and I spend like 10,000 naira for a month for one light, one TV, one fridge. How? Well, hopefully that will end. But how will that end? So the question of data, Professor Oke talked about how many houses are metered, how many need metering. And then the other side of it is, do we have the data Is the system working together even?
So data and whether the system is working together. On the issue of data, quite a few discos have what is called the AMI that allows smart meters to work. I don't know the last time Prof looked at the system, but they do have that. As far as how many homes have meters and so on, NEC has guidelines and an order in place directing enumeration. Enumeration is an ongoing process. Maybe you stop it in various windows and take a snapshot.
So as we speak now, we don't have the data.
We do. Enumeration is going on.
Okay.
And the last snapshot was in sometime in early 2019, or maybe about mid-2019, that gave the figure for about 6.5 million deficit on meters. But don't forget that perhaps you've just acquired or built 2 or 3 houses. You need meters for them. So it's an evolving system. Home population, the population of houses will continue to increase. So enumeration will happen periodically to determine how many homes will need metering. And this is what keeps the industry going on and sustainable and growing as well. So that happens constantly. Now, who are the people in the system? Let's say in the metering, in the electricity sector, there is an ecosystem. Now you have the MAPs, who are the guys who actually bring in the meters, and they also buy from the manufacturers in Nigeria and install in the homes. So you have the manufacturers right there. But then you also have the guys who are responsible for making sure that metering will work. We have various agencies and ministries involved. You have Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance controls customs duties. Okay? You have the central bank.
And there's a waiver on levies.
There is a waiver on that is the good job that the Minister of Finance
has done. But would it be implemented?
That's a problem.
Okay.
It's been in the air for like some 2-3 weeks, but we have not seen any white paper. We don't know how it's going to be done. I have had various things because I move in the system. I try to find out. But my encouragement to government is that they should consider all the stakeholders. They should make sure MAPs are involved. They should make sure manufacturers are involved as well, so that meters can be cleared quickly, and that also, when is it going to start? Because if it has started and we're still not in the know, that means valuable time is going on, and Mr. President has said 1 year. Therefore, time is essential. Now, you also have NEC. NEC is the supervising body for NESI, as it were. So they supervise the MAPs, they supervise the manufacturers as well. Now, and NEC tries to bring together everybody. Okay? Now, I will say that right now, to hopefully forestall another policy somersault on MAPs, government has done something that is unprecedented, first time, in which case there seems to be, it's yet to be formalized and to be announced to us, but there seems to be a team consisting of CBN, Customs, Finance, NEC, and 1 or 2 other agencies, Federal Ministry of Industries, that wants to make sure that factories are, manufacturers are patronized, MAPs are able to sustain by keeping their staff and adding value to NESI. So you have all of those people, and for the first time it looks like government has brought them all together, because I know that this last week they were in Lagos and parts of the country inspecting the available capacity. My plea to government is that just as they've recognized the manufacturers, they need to also call both manufacturers and meter asset providers to the table in these consultations to make sure that this time there will not be a policy somersault.
Okay.
That is the crucial message to success.
Okay, so Salab the Great says Discos want consumers to pay for the meters, and the meters will still be Discos properties. Funny as it is, we don't mind paying for the meters, but Discos should draw down the meter cost from electricity consumed to enable the consumer recover his money. How would that work? Ikmosa says the framing of the master plan is important. We must re-examine the components and their linkages. You talked about all those other players in the ecosystem. Distilling various complementaries and closing all gaps within the ecosystem should provide efficiency and effectiveness. Professor Oke, this whole idea, now, there is that coming together, the fusion. So, as we begin to wind down now, way forward.
Thank you. Way forward. The federal government is very sincere and honest now, which I do believe they are. Federal government should summon importers, essentially reputable meter manufacturers or importers as it were. They should engage also meter asset providers and representative of the discos and other stakeholders. Whatever incentive should be channeled through those who are to manufacture or import smart meters or any categories of meters for Nigerians. And once those meters are produced, they should make sure the discos patronize, prove those meters, because over the years, manufactured meters and they were abandoning it. So they should get involved, give that specification, and let the meter manufacturers do their job. The government has no business in meters, but they can facilitate meter production or as it were. So the incentive for engagement should be directly with those who are manufacturing meters and other ancillary stakeholders, if this policy statement will crystallize into fruition.
Okay, let's say this. Henry Domo-Spiff says the truth is that Nigerians don't need to pay for meters. Government should review agreement with discos and gencos, give soft loans to discos to meter everybody, and loans to gencos to generate power up to 50 megawatts. Government should never subsidize. Hinter says metering homes and companies is the disco's responsibility. So absolutely. The end user is actually like renting the meter and should not be asked to pay for it. But Phyllis, before he says, I would love to, he says he wants to see the professor speak ironically and unfortunately. So, but now, do you think this, as in with all the players, you for instance, what would you need as a manufacturer to ensure that meters are consistently put out there so that this policy would work and Nigerians can smile again?
Well, as a key player in the sector, we need policies, workable policies.
This is workable, isn't it?
Workable, yes. Workable policies and implemented policies. Once those things are in place, meters will keep rolling out and it will not stop unabated until the gap is closed. You know, over 6 million plus is a lot in this country, meaning the discos are smiling to the bank, whereas the consumers are crying. Whereas, you know, in my introduction, I said it ought to be a win-win situation. So if it is not a win-win situation, meaning it's not good enough. So what the government needs to do is to create more enabling environment for the meter manufacturers.
I'm sorry, when you say the discos are smiling to the bank, it sounds as if
no,
this
through
whole
the
thing is deliberate.
Well, absolutely. Why won't it be deliberate? They should tidy up their network and make this thing work. You have to, if you want to be in business, you'll be in business. You can't be in business and be making the other fellow to cry. Because you have said it severally, that somebody in a one-room bedroom apartment is paying 10,000 naira per month. That is too much. It presupposes that these discos are smiling to the bank with respect to somebody paying just 10 million. What yardstick are they using to measure the energy consumed? And it's supposed to be meter. So once the meter is not there for that person, he'll be paying excess. So, and that should not be the case. So the government should just ensure that this policy works. The moment it works and it's well implemented, and NEC should be up and doing, should be up to its responsibility, is key. And once you err, you are punished. And as we said the other time, you also echo it out, I think the meter manufacturer should be called to a roundtable discussion so that they can actually produce mass meters for Nigeria. They have the capacity to actually roll out meters. It's just to give them the go-ahead to do it. And once it can be taken off by the discos, the meters are there. Smart meters, for that matter, that is technologically driven, that you can actually recharge remotely from any part of where you are within the country. You can recharge.
But Nigerian manufacturers...
Of course, yes, they do that. They do that. I'm telling you authoritatively, they do that. They have the technology in Nigeria. The unfortunate thing in this country that we don't appreciate ourselves. We can actually move from where we are to another level if actually we appreciate ourselves and we also patronize ourselves. Don't forget, if you go outside to buy or procure meters, you are not helping the nation. And that's why I said in my old intro that we need to industrialize this sector, as it were, with this policy. So the implementation must be key. And what the government needs to do now is to call everybody to a roundtable discussion. Let's think outside the box. These meter manufacturers that I'm working with, they are prepared. They have even stock now that even if the discos want to take...
So with the stock they have now, that how much of that deficit will be reduced?
At least with what they have now, it can take care of 25%. And
of 6.5
absolutely,
million.
and they can produce more because they have the capacity to actually expand. And I want to urge you and your team to actually visit some of the meter manufacturers. Please, it's a challenge.
No, we will bring you back.
It's a challenge. Bring me back. It's an ongoing conversation. And they have the capacity to actually expand. I've visited most of them because I work directly with all of them. And they are prepared. And
so the stock in now can take care of 25% of the deficit.
Of course, yes.
So that deficit will reduce.
It will reduce
almost 3 million.
Absolutely, it will reduce drastically, and they can actually work around the clock again because now they are underutilized.
But then with this lockdown, you said something earlier about components that need to be imported. Couldn't those components be found within the country?
It can be found if the willpower is there. The willpower is not there. That's why the component, because there is no patronage. Once the patronage is there now, they will transfer technology and they'll be producing here. So along the value chain, meaning other people's, that is what I actually said in my intro, that this is an opportunity to actually develop the sector the more and make it more industrialized. So rather than looking outward, we'll now be looking inward, and it will actually provide more jobs for the teeming unemployed in Nigeria. And not only that, it also transfer technology into the nation. Then it will also add to the GDP and so many other things. So let's...
A holistic look indeed.
Absolutely. Let's come to a roundtable discussion.
I do know that we have...
Move on.
In almost all of our universities in country, we have departments, faculties of engineering, and if you get there, they do quite a lot of things. I mean, they do remarkable things in some of these schools. If he says we need to look inwards, for some of those components, they can actually be built in here. Again, how do we get to that point where we get everything together and move forward?
Okay. Incidentally, I'm an electrical engineer myself. I had my first few degrees in Nigeria before I went abroad. So, yes.
So you do agree that it can be done in country? I
do agree that it can be done in Nigeria. However, you need a real holistic policy framework to drive product development from the research table to the market. You need a real holistic, and you need a real government willpower to do that. Even though, at the end of the day, you provide that in whatever incentive you do, you're going to give it to the private sector, because the private sector will determine of the research work that is going on, what are the commercially viable products that can be brought to the market.
Because I didn't know, if we want to look at least one university per state, that's like 36 plus one university as a FCT in the country that have faculties of engineering. And each of these ones can look at these things, research development.
Each of them can look at it, but also the research endowment will determine just what kind of products they can bring to the market. But hey, what are we talking about here? Do you want to bring a heating coil to the market? It's made in Nigeria. That's a good thing. Do you want to bring an iron, pressing iron? It's a good thing. You have the product, you have everything you need in Nigeria. It will not be the best product on day one, but it will be workable. So everything is possible. I do know My industrial training in 1981 or the 80 was in Philips in Ikorodu here. And I do remember then that we had, wave technology and all of that for putting a PCB together. A PCB
1980.
In 19, yes. But Philips is dead now.
Ojota.
And we're saying that how do we make sure that that meter asset provider program and manufacturing how do we make sure the metering industry does not die? That is my own objective. Because if we are not careful, government will come up with incentives. If those incentives are not harmonized, we will not get our own metering industry. And we have the potential in Africa to develop an indigenous metering and electronic industry. That is what government has to look at. Make sure that the central bank makes available the kind of funding that can facilitate industrialization, facilitate, industrialization, especially within the electronic industry, because we are almost there. But we have to make sure that there's a concerted effort to make it happen. So if we now make the funders and the exchange rate managers work with the customs duty to make sure the custom duty levy is implemented at the proper time, and we make sure that the regulator is trying hard and working hard to bring all these things together, because they achieve the meter price increase, the custom duty removal. But if the meter price is increased and exchange rate has overtaken it, like it's going on right now, where we are back to square one. And then, do we want to reverse the policy on maps and manufacturing again? We got a problem. So all of these have to work together for us to get a sustainable metering industry that can attend to the consumers. And may I also remind the market that, the consumers, that actually there is a mechanism for them to recover the cost of their pricing in the tariff. As the tariff is improved again, they may be able to recover faster. So it's not as if they are paying for it and not able to recover. No, there is a mechanism for them to recover their money because the obligation is that of the disco. But a creative financing model is being introduced by saying, let the customers pay for it first, and then they will be refunded by way of energy credits. That is all that is happening. And we can achieve our own form of industrialization. Please note what South Korea did to get industrialized, what Japan did. It was concerted. They decided they want the electronic industry to move on, heavy shipping, in the heavy industry to move on, and they faced them at different phases of development. And they're where they are today. And their
bilateral conversations with some of these countries could actually get them to come set up here.
Absolutely.
Yes, but many of those setups may have failed. I know a few.
But they can be resuscitated.
They can be, absolutely, with the right incentives in place, they can be resuscitated. If their product price is correct, the FX price they're getting is correct, the funding is correct, the necessary guarantees are in place, and the custom duty is right, and port congestions and all of those things are worked upon, you can get things to happen in Nigeria. Don't forget, all the Nigerians that are overseas that are doing great and mighty things. We still have the brains right here.
All right, thank you very much. Uwemekpo says, others preferred analog or digital meters. Not all meters should be smart. The discos are not interested in metering because they have monopoly. It says the monopoly must be broken. It also says synergy is important in the power sector development. Yusuf says, I paid AEDC, that's Abuja Electric Distribution Company, I paid them 48,300 for meter 3 months ago. No meter. Yet, they are still threatening to disconnect me for not paying bills against NERC directives. Hinter says meters are never allowed to be manipulated or touched by end consumers. The absolute obligation of the discos is to facilitate the price of the kilowatt per hour to end consumers, which reflect on the bill. The cost of rent meter and all that. Quite a lot of things coming up here. Well, I want to say thank you so much for coming in today. Muhyiddin Ibrahim, Executive Secretary, Electricity Meters Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Duro Shola Omobenigun, CEO, Integrated Resources Limited. And Yemi Oke, Associate Professor of Energy and Electricity Law. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing today with us. We will get back to this conversation again, and I'm very sure of that. Hopefully, at that time, some things would have gained some traction.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much again.
It's my pleasure.
Have a beautiful day. Sunrise will be back in a moment. Please stay with us.
I have sinned.
Thank you for staying with us. We just finished talking about the power sector, and people are still talking about it. Someone asked the question. Steven says, "Are meter manufacturers in Nigeria producing meters that are to disco or international market specifications?" He says, "You can't market to someone what they don't want. You can't market a Corolla to someone that wants to buy a Range." Well, we had a manufacturer who talked about it. It says they have the specifications to meet the requirements of the discos. But as I said earlier, that conversation hasn't ended. We'll continue the conversation until we have it all together. But let's look at the economy at this point in time. Beating the coming recession. The corona pandemic has created a situation where a lot of people wonder, are we there yet? What's going to happen next? On Monday, for instance, the Bureau of Statistics, as the NBS, released a report that Nigeria's gross domestic product contracted by 6.1% year on year in the second quarter of 2020. Now, this generated various reactions by economists, as well as the federal government, who says they are making efforts to strengthen the economy, especially within the pandemic era. Are they taking the right steps? The policy declarations and statements, are they on point? Is it just about that? How much of awareness is trickling down to the citizenry who might be able to contribute one thing or the other, even in the pandemic? Well, Wilson Rumabo is a senior economist, Nigeria Economic Summit Group, and he joins us via Skype. Hello, Wilson. Okay, he'll join us shortly. But here in the studio, we have Oladotun Mabinuori, who's an economist. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So you heard that you heard about the release by the NBS.
Yes.
6.1%. Yeah. That's heavy.
Very heavy.
For an economy that wasn't moving at the pace we thought it would. I mean, this year alone, we're looking at growth rate at what level?
At 2.2, maximum 3.3%.
About 2.5 to 3.7. Okay, so, but now instead of growing, thanks to the pandemic, there's a contraction of 6.1.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for having me here once again. If you remember, 3 months ago, I was here. I think I was sitting at the other side of the studio, and I said we're here to see the effect of the impact of COVID-19, that whatever we are seeing now is not what we should expect. So this is the impact I was talking about 3 months ago. Because in economics, there's what we call lags. These things don't come, policies don't just, even when they have implementations, policies to combat this, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it drags before it starts seeing the effect. So we have been struggling since 2016 with growth. For even the growth that we've been having since 2016, we went to recession 2016 when we came out 2017, and the growth has always been below population growth rate. Our population growth rate has always been 3%. So we've always been having 1.18, 1.8, 2% population, economic growth. That means our economic growth has actually been negative. But it will be positive if it is higher than population growth rate. Then 2018 came. There was a report released by World Bank in April this year about Nigeria that we should expect 3.4 contraction in our GDP. And in May this year again, they released another one. Sorry, June this year, they released another one that should be 5.4. But unfortunately, it came out a few days ago, and it became 6.1%. It is not unexpected, because if you study the economy very well, you realize that so many things you have not been doing correctly for a while. So this growth coming at this juncture, this negative growth coming at this juncture, shouldn't meet us as a surprise. It's something we should be ready to face. And it's not only the growth rate we should look at as far as this economy is concerned. There are so many things, other macroeconomic variables we should look at. One of them, two of them, majorly, you're welcome, that should be what are not opposite, so to speak. There should be a trade-off between them. There are unemployment and inflation. Because according to Phillips Corp, there should be a trade-off. When one is going up, one comes down. When one is coming down, one goes up. In Nigeria right now, we have both of them increasing. Our inflation grew from 12.56% to 12.82%. Our unemployment grew from 23% to 27.1%. So unemployment is growing, inflation is growing. We call them the evil twin. No economy balances by managing the two, because there should be a trade-off between the two. So we have a lot of problem on ground already. So this now margin joining it. Then again, not too long ago, the issue of crashing currency joined them, so it became the trilemma. We're having inflation, we're having unemployment, our currency is falling. Just last week, the Nigeria's CBN pegged the exchange rate, the official exchange rate, to 396 naira. So that means exchange rate is still falling. I mean, our currency is still falling. Then this not joining it again become what they call the quadrilemma. We have inflation that we're battling with. We have unemployment that is rising. We have falling naira. Then the economy is contrasting. So we can't talk ourselves out of the problem we walked into. We walked into this problem, we should also walk out of it. So government should have what they call deliberate policies, both fiscal and monetary, to combat whatever we have on ground right now.
Deliberate policies,
issue.
fiscal and monetary
yes.
to come out of this.
Yeah.
Well, we've been joined by Wilson Erumebo, who is a senior economist in the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Thank you for joining us, Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so you heard Dotun talk about the things that have continued to dip. He talked about the population growth rate over time, which has stayed at over 3%, but our economy has been growing since 2016, for instance, between 1% and max 2.5%. And that, in other words, has been growing in negative. But now, this year, for instance, based on the NBS statistics, we have practically everything going downwards. We have the naira deeping, we have inflation increasing and unemployment increasing while the naira is deeping. So it should have been the other way, but instead it's the other way around. So where do we stand? He says the only way out is deliberate fiscal and monetary policy. Do you agree?
Absolutely, but I beg to differ a bit from the point that we've been having a negative GDP growth simply because our growth is not as high as growth rate is not as high as the population growth rate. I know, yes, for per capita income that's pretty much important, but if you look at the last decade, if you look at the 2000s decade, when we had a growth rate of about 6%, 7%, the economy was booming, driven by some of those telecom reforms, banking sector reforms, and all that. You would see that we were growing far above our population growth rate of about 3%. So we're having 7% economic growth, and population growth rate was still, about 2.73% thereabout. But still, even that growth was not enough to create jobs for people, to lift significant number of Nigerians out of poverty. So what that tells you is that we shouldn't be looking at benchmarking GDP as against population growth rate. Rather, what we should be looking at is how we can ensure that Nigeria's growth is inclusive. By inclusive, I mean you have a growth era that creates opportunities for Nigerians. As the economy is increasing, or as economic output is increasing, you have many Nigerians who are working. You have many Nigerians who can, engage in skills, provide skills to one or two people and earn income as a result of that. So I think, there's a lot. People often say that GDP must be higher than population. We've had that exact same case but at the same time, that growth was not inclusive. So if we can even have a 3% growth rate that, in its sense, is more inclusive, growth is coming from the key sectors, sectors that are very crucial to output, sectors that are crucial to employment, sectors that have forward and backward linkages like manufacturing and all that. I think that would even be more, more robust and more impactful on the lives of citizens than, having to say that GDP must be higher than population. For per capita income, yes, that's a good narrative. But if we're talking about real economic impact, I think we should be looking at a more inclusive growth rate. Secondly, yes, like he said, rightly said, this is not a thing of one side or the other, or a monetary policy problem. This is an economic problem. And of course, we need both the CBN, the monetary authorities, and the fiscal authorities to come together. I mean, look at the second quarter, for instance, minus 6.1%. This is like the highest decline we've had since 2004, if you look at GDP quarterly data. So it's basically as a result of the lockdown. I mean, with COVID came the fact that we need to lock down the economy for a while. So that's one key reason. And many of the sectors that were affected, education, transport, trade, and all that. So we saw huge negative growth rates across those sectors. And I want to make a very clear point that if you look at previous recessions in Nigeria, the history of recessions, most of them, whether a recession or decline, most of them were associated with the fact that crude oil price keeps declining. So when you have a fall in oil price, it translates quickly to either you have foreign currency problems, or you have, because Nigeria relies so much on import, and then you start having a reserves problem, balance of trade problem, and that trickles down into the fact that you can't even produce more because you can't even source for input. So adding crude oil, the fact that crude oil price declined in April, it was close to $9 per barrel. Adding the COVID-19 lockdown rules to that only made the situation worse. And it tells you that, that's why we saw this huge decline. And it also tells you that as we go into the quarter, into the remaining part of the year, things may not get bright for Nigerians. There's still more to come. The fact that we're now moving into a phase where the naira is facing so much pressure, reserves are not robust at this time, just about $32 billion. So that tells you that a lot more is coming.
Okay,
It also means that
Wilson, if I may come in here, Wilson, when you say you don't agree with Dotun, you talked about inclusive growth. Let's look at this. So the GDP fell by 6.10% year on year in real terms, but for second quarter of 2020. But as at the first quarter, the GDP fell by 2.18% compared to the same period, or in the same period in 2019, it was 2.11 decline. So it looks like the decline started in 2019. So it's not just a 2020 thing. The decline went down 2019 first quarter 2.11, first quarter 2020 2.18. Then second quarter is 6.1. Now you said that one, let's tie that to the pandemic, but it looks like the decline began in 2019. Now, if you look at that, and this latest points to the fact that even though the government is hailing this new report, they've continued, the government appears to have continued to fall short of the target set in the ERGP over time. So how does that tie into Dotun's suggestion that there has to be deliberate efforts and steps towards growth, even with the suggestion you made about inclusive growth? Do you see any deliberate steps?
Well, first of all, this is the first year-on-year decline we've had, since 2017 Q1, the first quarter of 2017, when we got out of the last recession. So what we've seen is that the economy has been improving as at from the last recession. But so this is the first huge negative decline we've had. So GDP decline we didn't have a negative growth in 2019. But that said, I think a lot more still needs to be done. We've had a lot has been done, particularly from the CBN aspects, to see how they can inject cash into the system. But then from the fiscal side, particularly the Ministry of Finance, we heard that the government announced a 500 billion naira intervention fund, for support for the economy and all that, to be able to relieve the pressures from the COVID thing. But I think we still need to do more in terms of accountability. Who are getting these funds? Where are these monies going into? How many citizens? Because we're not just talking about poor citizens. We have about 83 million poor Nigerians. We're not just talking about them. We're talking about even the middle class that are affected by this pandemic, because of course people couldn't even work. People that had jobs lost their jobs. A lot of people couldn't even search for jobs. We saw how the labor force declined. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's not just about the CBN alone injecting all this money. It's the ministry. Who exactly is getting these funds? We see other countries, like Canada, for instance, paying citizens about $1,500, for them to be able to withstand this shock, and all that. So, but I don't see that happening in Nigeria. Very, very few individuals are getting some of these funds, and it's not going around. But more importantly, I think in the next few quarters, what we should be looking at, and this relates more to inclusive growth, is the fact that we need to pay attention to some of these sectors that are very crucial for job creation in Nigeria. Over time, I mean, for how long can we keep distributing and distributing cash to citizens? I mean, and even that alone is not even enough to go around. So we must see how we can create sustainable ways to lift people out of poverty, sustainable ways to create jobs. And that means focusing on the sectors, looking at incentives. What is the role of the regulators, for instance, in manufacturing, looking at FX issues, power supply and infrastructure and some of those things. I think we've overflogged those issues, yes, but it still doesn't mean they are not important. Pick a sector. I mean, a government should be able to come together and say, look, this is our plan, this is our vision for our manufacturing sector, for our Greek sector. This is how we intend to support businesses that operate within this sector. And that World Bank, IMF, several agencies have shown that the most sustainable way out of poverty is through jobs and skills development. So no matter how much you keep giving people cash and all that, it will never be sustainable. So I think
Wilson, we'll need to permit me to interrupt you here. We'll just need to go on a quick break. We'll come back to continue the conversation. Just stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're discussing the Nigerian economy. Festus Akimboewa says the damage done to our economy by COVID-19 is huge, but not as bad as countries like the UK and South Africa. Our economy can recover quickly because the federal government appears to be getting the immediate economic response right. Wilson, I mean, yes, Wilson also said the same thing, but you appeared not to agree with what Wilson said and what Festus is saying here. You said you need to see more deliberate steps, more deliberate action. Now, Wilson's talked about inclusive growth and diversification coming from Festus. What do you think?
Okay. Just as Wilson said the other time, population growth and... in contrast to what he said, actually, I'll still maintain my stand. Population growth plays a vital role in measuring economic growth. Because anytime the growth in an economy is below population growth, number one, per capita income declines. And if you're just looking at GDP, the only way GDP gets to every individual is through per capita income. So if we could agree that increase in population being above GDP means per capita income to decline, that means our welfare, and a good measure of welfare is per capita income. So it means our welfare is declining, despite the fact we are seeing the growth. We are seeing growth in our GDP. And again, the growth we have experienced in the last, pre-2014 is what we call, pre-2015, before we went into recession in 2016, is what they call jobless growth. In case people are losing their jobs and economy is growing, that means technology is driving the economy. And if you check the area where telecommunication industry start booming in Nigeria, they send some people packing. Especially people that are doing traditional jobs. We know people that lost their job as a result of invention of technology, that is MTN and co coming to the economy. But if you also look at it on the other side, their contribution to the economy is huge, to the point that it's even recorded in GDP. So economy will surely grow. That was called the jobless growth. Economy is growing, people are losing their jobs. But at this juncture, we have gone beyond that jobless growth. It's a serious issue we're having right now, and it will be good to handle it seriously. This is not time for government to play politics on the palliatives they are giving, on what have you. Now, if you check the GDP of Nigeria, for instance, 70% of our GDP, consumption account for 70% of our GDP. And if you check component of GDP, we're looking at consumption, investment, government spending, and international trade. Then consumption accounting for 70%. That means whatever affects consumption affects 70% of whatever happens in GDP, because that is the major exogenous variable we are looking at here. So for 3-4 months now, people have been home. Consumption is not as the way we used to have it. Companies that they rely on this consumption in terms of their own sales, because if what somebody is consuming is what somebody is buying, then they have closed down shops, they have closed down manufacturing units, then the economy is going down. So it is time for government to work on that consumption part of our GDP. If consumption can rise again, and again, this is a civil service economy, if consumption can rise again by either deliberate attempt or whatever attempt government wants to use, either monetary or fiscal, then we can bounce back to reality. Because if care is not taken, after two successive decline in GDP, which is recession, we have not even entered recession now. So when the second next quarter comes, and it's also negative, two consecutive decline in GDP is what makes a successive decline in a quarter report that makes us enter recession. And if you continue for 4 to 6 quarter, then we enter depression. And depression is not what we should even look at. So this is time for us to combat this now, possibly reduce the negative rate, so that when third quarter from now will be released, then it turns positive. So and not just turning positive above the GDP, I mean our population growth rate. If population is moving at 3%, I mean we need more than 3% growth in population for us to say, okay, we're having inclusive growth. And having inclusive growth is not by talking. We have to work it. Government needs to seriously embark on even technology. We're having technology unemployment here. We also need to talk about technology employment also. How do we use technology to combat the kind of unemployment we have right now? Because there are so many types of unemployment we are looking at, and about 3 of them are currently bedeviling Nigeria. For instance, structural unemployment is there, cyclical unemployment is there, then technological unemployment is one of the things we are having right now. So those 3 unemployment, government should have deliberate attempts to tackle each of them one after the other.
I like the fact that you're enumerating the deliberate steps you're asking government to take. One is on tackle unemployment,
yes. the
different types of unemployment that we have. But when Wilson talked about inclusive growth, he talked about he got to a point where he talked about CBN inserting cash into the system. But he asked the question, where the money is going to?
So if you remember also the last time I was there, I also said I am not a pro cash palliatives. This is what I'm saying. You don't just give people money, because money doesn't solve problem. Money doesn't take us out of just giving money for the sake of giving money. The money has to be directed towards a particular purpose. If you are giving money to increase people's skills, if you are giving them money to increase their employability, if you are giving them money to do that, instead of giving money to buy goods and services, for instance, another thing you can do is government can spend money on manufacturers by reducing their cost of production, creating what they call increasing the ease of doing business in the economy. By doing all those things, price of goods and services will come down.
But you see, you know the recent directive of the president. We talked about it before this segment about power.
Yes, sir.
Isn't that a step in the right direction?
Yeah, it's a very good step. Power, transport, and the likes. They are right step in the right direction that we should take. For instance, I think recently we hit the highest electricity supply in Nigeria, about 5,300 and something megawatt, which is the highest in recent time. So if we can continue in that direction, and that's what I was talking about, cost of doing business. If you have maybe 10,000 megawatts electricity generation in Nigeria, for instance, and manufacturing firms are getting it at almost at affordable prices, the cost of running generator will be out of it, then cost of doing business will come down, then price of goods and services will come down, people will be able to afford the goods being produced, then the economy will bounce back. So it's not just direct palliatives. If you give people money and there's even no goods to buy, that will lead to what they call demand pull inflation. So we can't try to correct one while creating another problem. Do you understand? So government should be very, very deliberate, and not just be deliberate, should be very, very focused and directional at this juncture. If I'm tackling this, how am I handling this? If I'm handling this, how am I handling this? But not just giving money to people out there. It doesn't solve it. In fact, it will deepen the growth rate and the negative side more.
Okay, Wilson, government should be very, very deliberate, not just giving out cash, not just inserting the cash. I know you asked that question. Who is getting this fund? There is the agricultural incentive, there's money for agriculture, there's money for rice, there's money for different things. And now we'll hear about the policy for power, where they are getting some kind of waiver, custom levy waiver for those who are manufacturing meters, so that Nigerians get metered all over. Are these steps deliberate enough? Are they inclusive enough?
Well, I think no. I mean, to give a straight answer, I think we can still do a lot more, particularly if we're talking about inclusive growth. I agree with the last part that my good friend cited, where he said it's not just about doling out cash to people, because even in other countries, I mean, and generally even in economic theory and all that, you can't. I mean, these things are usually temporary. Some are called conditional cash transfers. In the sense that they give you a condition and say, okay, for instance, if you have to send your child to school, then we'll give you XYZ amount of money, for a certain period of time. But giving out cash can never and cannot, revive an economy and, create, that much opportunity, because even the government is facing severe pressure in terms of revenues. If you look at the fact that we don't even have as much savings, I mean, the ECA is depleted, the reserves $35 billion and all that, compared to other oil producing countries who are, way far behind. So I think what we should be looking at, and if we're talking about inclusive growth, it's more on incentives for businesses, and not just businesses. I think this should be targeted, particularly at the crucial sectors. Sectors like power, like you cited earlier, and more importantly, I think manufacturing still remains, a sector that that has suffered for Nigeria for so long, and it's even very much important that now we start looking at some of these sectors to revive the economy. So, for instance, in the manufacturing sector, you have about 13 subsectors. But if you look at those 13 sectors, the growth within that sector is still very skewed to food and beverage and textile and apparel. Meanwhile, you have sectors like pharmaceuticals, other subsectors like base metals, cement. Some of these sectors are very instrumental, particularly in getting other sectors of the economy to work. So I think we must be very strategic, even as are looking at being deliberate. We must be very strategic to say, have we really done an analysis to say what sectors have very strong forward-backward linkages? What sectors have very strong link to job creation? What sector has strong link to inclusive growth? And I think we can pay more attention to that. One other thing, and I always, I think I'm becoming an advocate of trying to of the ease of doing business thing. And one aspect of that is on regulation, our regulatory authorities. I mean, whether it's the NAFDAC, whether it's SON, whether it's customs and all that. I think our regulators need to be more pro-business. Because most times we have situations where a regulator just makes a pronouncement. He doesn't really care about the impact of that pronouncement on businesses. So we can't afford to keep going like that. I can cite so many of those cases that has happened in the last 1 year, even in the midst of a pandemic. A regulator can come and just close up your business, and whether it's through taxes, whether it's some informal charges, that are being levied on business. Those little things, little in quotes, are very crucial to determine how easy your business environment is. If we're looking at huge inflows of foreign direct investments into the country, we must be able to, we must clearly articulate how we can address some of these issues that are very critical. If there's time, the last thing I would talk about is exchange rate. I think so much we focused on CBN, which of course is very understandable. But the solution to Nigeria's FX crisis is not just in the CBN itself. It goes beyond the CBN. It should include, the Ministry of Trade, Investment, Ministry of Finance, and all that. And simply because whatever measure the CBN would introduce, selling FX to BDCs and all that, they are only temporary measures. The solution to Nigeria's FX problem is to be able to generate FX income from other sources other than oil. And that's just it. If we cannot, we need to see how we can revive the non-oil sector, increase non-oil exports. Nigeria has a very devalued currency as against the US dollars. This ideally, Dotun would explain better that it is even more at an advantage for Nigeria to export to other countries, because exports from Nigeria would become very, very cheap. You see the trade war between the US and China. It's basically, this is the underlining factors, because China is leveraging on its currency to dominate the global market and even the US market. So I think we need to be strategic enough to decide what are the areas for non-oil exports that we can begin to develop. Yes, I wouldn't advocate for a reduction in crude oil exports, but how much can we increase non-oil exports to be able to generate additional and adequate effects for the country? We are very much import dependent. We import a lot of goods. Even the manufacturing sector relies heavily on imports of inputs, agriculture, and all that. So I think we must begin to see what can we produce that is needed within the country. What can we produce that is even needed elsewhere, even in the midst of pandemics? Look at China, for instance. They recorded a positive growth in the second quarter. Why? Because they started producing massive helmets and not helmet, apologies, the face shield, nose mask and all that, exporting to other countries. I mean, this is looking for opportunities in the midst of pandemic and trying to get your citizens to work, get to the factories, opening up businesses and all that. So I think those are the directions we need to look at. What do people need? What does the world need that we can begin to produce? Even looking at the AFTA, the free trade agreement within Africa, there's so much opportunity to export to so many African countries within the within around us, and even those within the continent. So I think a lot more needs to go into that direction rather than focusing more on palliatives. Palliatives will only be temporary. Yes, they're important, but we can even go down to say how many Nigerians even get these palliatives, and all that. So I think that's more of where we should be looking at, creating sustainable opportunities for citizens, for businesses in the economy. So I think that's what we should be looking at the moment.
Okay, Wilson, thank you. Dr. Wilson he said something. I actually wrote down the question of trade and investment. And Wilson touched on it briefly, but he said you will explain. So you will need to break it down. It also says there are opportunities in the area of trade and investment.
Yeah.
But hold on there. Invent Nigeria says they use made in Nigeria prepaid meters in Ikeja, and they can be loaded remotely and all that. He said it appears that billing is not consistent with usage. But it also says the right policies, Nigeria can be the trade and investment hub in West Africa. Dotson said, if Nigeria exports, it will be cheaper and a lot of people will get the things. But the manufacturers here still need to import some of these components.
Yes.
So how can we balance the import of those components looking inwards? Because, again, we talked about this, the fact that R&D from the research centers in Nigeria, I mean, at least 36 research centers, meaning one university per state here, can provide some level of research and development if there can be a linkage. So how can we tie all of that up and begin to send things out, export?
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you, Wilson. He actually did a very good job out there. Falling naira has two ways. We have two ways of looking at it. That is our foreign currency, when currency depreciates or when government intentionally devalues it. One is that it makes exports very lucrative. That is, people can easily, so that means what I was selling, for instance, if I'm exporting goods worth $1 million before now, what I will get in return, if it is, as of January this year was 308 to $1, that means I will get 308 million as revenue as a manufacturer, as an exporter. But now it is 400, almost 400, 386 naira at yesterday exchange rate. It means same good, same value. If it is going out, I'll be getting 386 million as revenue from 302. From 3, so that means to a very large extent I've made more money. So it makes exports more lucrative. It makes exports more attractive. And no nation grows by importation, except you are importing strategic raw materials that you can't find substitutes here. Then the second flip of devalued currency is that it makes importation very expensive. That is what I was buying at 3. If I'm buying goods worth 1 million naira from outside the country before, that means goods I was buying at 306 million naira before now is now 386 million to import the same quantity of goods. So as an importer, there are two things I do. I do what they call import substitution. I look for locally produced goods to substitute for what I was importing at Benisho. But the question is, do we have same quality that was bringing in from outside? Because we are looking at a very sensitive one here. I was talking about meter. Do we have enough components that will substitute what we have been importing from outside the country? If not, we'll set many houses ablaze. That's the meaning. Imagine putting default meter in about 1 million houses in Nigeria, and all of a sudden, just one button, all of them catch fire. That means that 1 million houses will burn. So we have to be very careful in terms of quality. We shouldn't sacrifice quality for just all the name of import substitution. So that means to a very large extent, some importers will still bring in some raw materials. And by bringing that in, if their product is very essential, that is, the elasticity of their product is inelastic, they will pass that to the consumer, which is called the pass-through effect.
Let's look at this. We have some kind of comparative advantage. Yeah. For instance, for those who build, they will tell you, when I want to build, I use Nigerian cables.
Yeah.
Made in Nigeria cables. So if we have cables that are made in Nigeria, is that not to say that we can actually look at areas we have
comparative
advantage to focus on and manufacture for export?
Sir, I think the problem in that instance is the neglect of our universities. If you check, when Obama became president in 2008, he, in fact, more or less like he went to the university and said, please bail us out of this problem. And they started doling out policies, products, different ways of getting out of that. That's what helped America. You know, he got a very dwindling economy and he brought it to what he handed over to Donald Trump. Same thing is what we can do. We can't neglect our university and say we want to get things out of this place. There are universities that, for instance, there are so many universities that are doing mechatronics, that are doing so many things. Very few of them in the country, both private and public universities. Go to them. Government should say, okay, please, we want to develop meter in Nigeria. We have mechatronics. University is there, University of Ladoka University, they are all University of Technologies. Go to them and talk to them, please. Give us this product. We are giving you deadline between now and the next 6 months. Give us a product that we do.
But is it governments that will do that? What about the private sector going to the institutions to say R&D for us?
This is
the endowment. You don't understand. We want to fund this in your university. Do it and give to us to manufacture. Wouldn't that be good for the school as well as for the private sector?
Fine. Some private sectors are doing that. In fact, just recently, some university developed automated washing hand machine has been requested by some private sectors. But major thing here we are talking about is if there is a deliberate policy, even government itself, government has a way of having this what they call body language. If government, for instance, partners with one university, a University of Technology, and say, please give us a meter that can, number one, stand the test of time. Standard Organization of Nigeria will certify it. So many other agencies, and again, it meets international standard. Then we're not going to what they call, not just producing what we consume, but consuming what we produce. Because one thing is to produce, okay, Nigeria is consuming meter and I produce meter. Can we consume that meter? Because there's what we call psychology of consumption. Some people are not buying imported goods because they want to show affluence. Some are buying because, number one, of lack of trust on the domestic consumption. But if government can deliberately lead from the front and say, I want to do this, university, please give us this product, give us direction, then others can go. Then we will save the pressure on foreign reserve, on our foreign exchange, because this foreign exchange we are looking at between now and December, if care is not taken, to get even beyond 500 naira. But there are so many indices that should be in place that are not in place. Foreign remittances is dwindling. So many things are dwindling. Our oil again, which contributes about 60% of our foreign reserve. 80% of our foreign reserve and foreign exchange, and 60% of our revenue is already in problem. So it's a serious one.
Thank you very much. Clinton Epic says, way back in the 80s, Nigeria was rated the highest exporter of columbite, and this is because our mining sector was working. It's time the government takes a good look at the mining sector because it is our chance of survival. Ipumosa finally says, our focus now should be local production for local consumption and exports to other countries.
Simple.
Thank you so much. Wilson Rumebo is a senior economist, Nigeria Economic Summit Group, who joined us via Skype, and Oladotun Mabinori is an economist who's here in our Lagos studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So as we'll be back in a moment, just stay with us.
Bring it on. Are you ready? Ready? No matter how you try, don't you ever fall. Keep your head up high and standing tall. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Thank you for staying with us. We are... See, if you notice today, the conversation has just been about how to make things better, better power supply, better economy, which will affect life. And now we're... Festus says Nigeria's economy will bounce back as the federal government is easing COVID-19 restrictions. Shops, hotels, restaurants, schools, and international flights should all resume now. He thinks that will make it better. But while that is happening, what about the digital quality of life? Have you ever heard that phrase? Now, that sounds strange to some people. Digital quality of life. Now, on that index, it gives insight into how people's overall well-being or welfare is influenced by their digital well-being. A study samples the quality of digital well-being in 85 countries across the globe over 5 key pillars: internet affordability, internet quality, electronic infrastructure, electronic government, and electronic security. It's a product of privacy company Shack, providing insights into the gaps between people's online experience and various societies. Now, that's long grammar. But on that index, that's a Digital Quality of Life Index, the 2020 index, Nigeria stands at 81 out of 85 countries. doesn't sound too good. But in Africa, Nigeria is in the 5th position. So, but how much do we as Nigerians agree to this ranking? Do we even know about it? Anyway, so to help us look at this, we have Emilia Asamita, who is a multi-sector strategist. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Also joining us is Frank Ofem, who's a digital consultant. He joins us from Ibadan via Skype. Hello, Frank.
Hello, hi.
It's good to have you. I would have greeted you in your language, but I'm not sure whether you would speak it on live television. So don't worry. We'll come back to that in a bit. Let me start off with you, Emilia. Talk to us about what's this thing about digital quality of life. We'll talk about quality of life, and then you're coming up with this digital quality of life. Tell us about that.
Okay, so when we talk about digital quality of life, in that phrase, it talks about the impact and the extent to which the digital ecosystem affects day-to-day living. Now, prior to now, say a decade ago, digital was considered only as a terminology that related to things around technology, information communication technology, ICT. But you've seen, I mean, we have all seen how the world has evolved into a digital world. And so when we talk about things that have to do with digital now, we're not speaking about technology anymore. We're talking about sustainable development. And you see that the frame of reference as a development agenda ties to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which will lapse in 2030. And 2020 has been declared as the beginning of the decade of action. So things that have to do with digital are much more than just being technology. It's now mainstream life. And, you know, some of the work that we have done as an organization with respect to that has been to really take a look at just what digital has become. And some of the projects we've done, I mean, I'll go into that a bit later, around capturing, you know, what does it mean when you say digital business? So I guess the digital quality of life as a report is not as popular, but it should be popular because it will help governments, both subnationals and national governments, to really rethink and recalibrate, you know, sort of the quality of life that people have.
You know, it's strange to think that my life, the quality of my life, can be measured based on how much time I spend on the internet, how much time I spend on my phone. And that's turning out to be a lot of time these days.
And that's for you because you belong to a few of the privileged. So the quality of life of the larger number of population of Nigerians is also, you know, it's also qualified or categorized by their inclusion or exclusion in digital space. So when you have people who are not connected to the internet at all, we can say it bothers a great deal on their quality of life.
So what if we say the digital quality of life is negatively impacting on the human quality of life?
Well, prior to the pandemic, yes. We would say you walk into a room, people have become antisocial, everybody's staring at their phones. I'm on TV, I have my phone in my hand, for instance. You know, so prior to now, you'd say that. But with the lockdown, with the pandemic, these have become our lifesavers, as it were. We now solely depended on devices for every single thing, to reach people, to stay connected, to stay informed, to get DIY tips on how to save our own lives. So you'd see that the tide, let me not say the tide has changed, that's cliched, you know, it's gone 360, full circle. What used to be a nice to have, what used to be second to basic amenities, food, shelter, and clothing, has now jumped on the ranks. So maybe not shelter, I would say food, shelter, and digital, so to speak.
Okay, let's talk to the consultant and let him tell us about that. Frank FM, this matter of, because some people have more or less like lost their human relations capabilities, not completely, but that has somewhat declined. And their digital capabilities, their digital relation capability appear to have gone up. Is that what it ought to be? What happens to our humanity in the face of the digital age?
Okay, yeah. So, as people would generally want to have the best of experiences no matter where they are. Um, just like our guest there on the studio has said, if you push it a step further, I'd like to say that that quality of life index that we see is a complement of quite a lot of things. And I'm quite glad that this kind of topic is coming up now, especially as we approach the post-COVID era. I have attended 2 weddings. I have attended 2 funerals, interestingly, coincidentally, 2. And I didn't have to leave my location. And I could send my gifts ahead to the parties who were, and my condolences. And I did everything, and nobody felt offended that I was not able to attend. So that quality of being in the present, being in the now, I believe that was what was targeted in the index that we see from the report.
Okay, Emilia, first of all, the ranking that Nigeria is on, do you agree with that? 81 out of 85.
I'm indifferent, to be honest. And I'd just like to add to what Frank said before I go to that, is to say that prior to now, those who were introverted, were, so to speak, on the other side. They had to show up. They had to live up to the expectations of their relatives, to attend functions, to smile. But now they have that balance, that opportunity to maintain their safe space and control their access and level of socialization, as it were, with the outside world. That's on the one side. On the other side is it takes an extra effort for you to bond and engage someone that you can't see face to face. So when I'm on a Zoom call, for instance, I need to be conscious about my voice. I need to smile. I would like for people to see me, to relate with me. Prior to, if there wasn't that technology interface, I'll just be myself. I mean, I might be a bit cold. I may not be warm. So it does take, and what I'm trying to say is it does take some set of social skills even to adapt to this new normal and the use of technology. Imagine 2 weddings, 2 funerals. That it's even possible to do all of that in one day, depending on your schedule and the itinerary of when those things happen. So I was really disappointed, to answer your question, that Nigeria ranked 85. But when I looked
81.
at 81 rather out of 85, but when I looked at the other countries and I looked at even the African countries, there are some African countries that are not even listed at all. So I would say that what that challenges us to do as a country is to perhaps commission our own study, and let's look at our digital quality of life as a country and see where we stand. But again, 81, there's really little to be, that's to be desired of such. We're talking about internet affordability. We still have penetration pretty low. People talk about how the telecom organizations and technology firms have made so much money in a pandemic. I agree, and I don't quite agree in some cases, because more than ever, they had to boost their systems to ensure that there's little or no downtime, right? So it's even now more obvious if the quality of your service is not at par. And we've seen people on social media, brands, being dragged for poor quality of service. So it's putting a tech entrepreneur under a lot of pressure, because now more than ever, people want to see what you're about. The quality of the internet is another parameter with which the digital quality of life index or report was considered.
And some people who have been touting themselves as number one have shown themselves as number nowhere.
There's some trends that have come up just, that have the capacity to destroy businesses altogether, based on the quality.
We'll take a moment. Festus is saying it's sad that poor broadband and mobile connectivity continues to drag Nigeria down the digital quality of life index until there's effective investment in broadband. Again, that effective investment, Frank will have to weigh in on that, but that one will come back from this break. Just stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're looking at the digital quality of life. Nigeria has been ranked out of 85 countries 81 based on 5 parameters: internet affordability, internet quality, electronic infrastructure, electronic government, and security. Now, Festus says investment in broadband will make it easier. Frank, over this period of the pandemic, we've seen that there's been more of the digital in Nigeria. And indeed, you talked about it. You've attended 2 funerals, 2 weddings, all from the comfort of your room. But do we have what it takes? Do we have that infrastructure? And how, if we don't, how can we move out of there?
Okay, so I think it's a neat scenario as you would have it. The experience that I have is not relative to me alone. There are quite a number of people that have gone through such experiences too. But this is my take. Whether it is an SME, whether it is a single person, a family, yeah, we have to look at the big picture of the quality of how broadband, for instance, okay, how it would affect me as an individual, my health, my consumption of education, my consumption of power. So if you look at it from that perspective, you see that it's actually a bigger picture than just a one singular problem, be it just IT infrastructure, for instance. So I know this topic is going to come up, but along the line of personal experience still, we've seen where children, where the teachers, schools have said, okay, hey, the pandemic is on, we'd like to train your kids. But it then so turns out that the parents are worried about the quality of broadband or the cost of broadband, as the case would be, you know. And then even when one is structuring online training programs within that period, you also still find out that it's safer for you to do recordings than to have the now effect of one-on-one sessions because of the quality of what you are going to get out of it. So that mix and match is still quite a challenge.
But while we're looking at that, while everybody, how do we even improve this quality while we're waiting for the investments we keep talking about?
The improvement of quality is, I've been following all the programs that have been going on today quite interestingly. It's not far-fetched. Policies, frameworks, and the stakeholders. If you want to improve on the quality for health, for instance, you know that you cannot do that in isolation, you know, at any level. It has to do with the people who, it's just like talking about the case of rape, for instance, and then all those who are on the panel are all men. It doesn't just add up. So all people who are involved in health, both those who are patients, both those who are, it's not also about having to do a direct copy of infrastructural setup of most of the countries that are also in this report. If you watch, the report is quite funny because it says that affordability is not directly related to the quality of life. And then for me, I would want to differ because in our own case, I believe affordability could have taken care of a lot of issues that has to do with access primarily. Because if I can access it, then we can challenge it on a sector by sector basis. Say be it health, for instance, say be it education, be it power.
You know, Amelia, that the question of affordability being directly or indirectly links to the quality of digital life. There are those who argue. I mean, to some extent, some people say Nigerians are paying the highest for internet access.
Yes, we are.
But yet, it appears to be everywhere. So every man, as far as he or she can get an Android phone.
Yeah.
Some as cheap as low as 10,000 naira.
$30.
Can get access to the internet. I mean, you can get 200 megabytes for 200 naira.
This conversation is a broad one, and I'll try to capture very quickly. I remember when one of the telecom companies offered free SMS services, and it became a trending issue on Twitter. People were talking about how They don't want SMSs, they want data. But when they released their report 3 months after, and it showed the number of people that had taken up the SMS and the value and contribution, was amazing. So to say you stay in an urban area, I believe, so it's easy to have a bit of a jaded experience. Those who stay in peri-urban and rural areas will tell you that...
No, I'm a village boy. So whenever I go to the village, I just know that forget internet.
Thank you. So when we all go for our end of year, for those who go for end of year, celebrations, they'll tell you, limited access. Let's even leave that. Those who go into rural areas for field work would tell you, you get out of office replies. I'm on the field. Expect delayed responses because of limited access. So it is poor. But one area that I like to really fault this index is the fact that Rwanda is not captured, Ghana is not captured. These are two countries that have made significant progress in provision of broadband infrastructure and the use of technology for good. And if they are not captured, then it just it's not.
Does that negate the report?
It doesn't, but it doesn't give a true picture of Africa's position. So if you have Nigeria ranking 81, Kenya ranking 77, South Africa ranking 59, and Morocco ranking 70, and then Rwanda is not captured. Rwanda has been celebrated, albeit a small country, so there's still some of those concerns and challenges. But as one of the best models in the integration of technology. So my concern is it doesn't give a very good picture of the continent and some of the significant achievements and strides that we've made. But I think looking inward into Nigeria is to say what has happened. Government must do beyond crashing right-of-way costs, as we've seen in Ekiti State and some other states. Lagos is trying to take the bull by the horn, to champion, fiber and broadband access. Government must do more than set up regulatory agencies to fine and tax, telecom companies and technology companies, and try to make money out of the sector.
While they are doing that, the question of regulation.
Yes.
So they are giving the
better
enabling environment.
Regulation,
but the guys who are rendering the service are not rendering quality service.
Yes.
So I pay $12,500 for internet access a month, and the provider is quick to remind me that my subscription would soon expire, and then I make my payment. But when I call to say there's a downtime, I can't get access, nobody talks to me. We will schedule you, and I can't talk to anybody about it.
So the challenges because of some of the work that I do for, and also working with a group called the Technology and Telecom Sustainability Working Group, so we look at sustainability issues, environmental and social issues, and how they relate to the provision of, quality services in some cases. Engaging, extensively with the telecom companies, they'll tell you that there's a lot of regulation. They're paying so much, and their services are dependent on some other factors. Power, they have to provide their own power, and most of the time in very environmentally unfriendly ways, so through generators, diesel generators. Some have alternative sources, renewable energy, just to try and ensure that there's no downtime in the provision of service. And some of them have done, fairly well through the pandemic, in the midst of very intense pressure, by stakeholders and all of that. So when you have challenges such as we do in Nigeria, and we're yet to really solve and deal with the issue of power, then you want to, which is why I'm saying government should do a bit more than set up these infrastructure regulatory agencies to say, look, yes, we've crashed the right of way, costs, but what else can we do? They must sit face to face with these guys to say, we're going to demand from you the best quality of service, but we also want this service to be, somewhat stable and dependable. And in some cases, how can we ensure that we can subsidize it? So, and I know that this is not in a concurrent list, in the exclusive list in terms of, under the ambit of the federal government, for broadband policies and, data costs and all of that. But we need to really have that conversation, because if the companies continue to pay so much in fines and taxes, let me leave fines, in taxes to the government, then it's difficult for, in some cases, for you to demand, monitor, and insist that they give this quality and that they also provide subsidized services. So government must do more than, in this case, create this enabling environment. Because when you ask the private sector guys to come in, you must allow them come in a way that competition can, drive down market costs, and then everybody benefits at the end of the day.
I was going to talk to you about what happened in some other climes where you walk into a shop, you can buy a phone, and the phone comes with a line and comes with data and call credit, and you pay monthly subscription. Would that help to make things, to increase the digital quality of life for Nigerians?
I think it's possible. I mean, there was a time in this country where we thought per second billing was impossible until someone did it. So a lot of things are possible. We just need to open up the space in ways that encourage many more investors, to come on board. So now we have a number of organizations who are now investing in the critical infrastructure.
Okay, Frank, the question of cybersecurity, when we talk about increasing quality of digital life, cybersecurity comes to mind. I mean, a lot of people are concerned about their data being captured or being stolen. If they are buying things online, someone might steal their bank details and all of that. How would that work in the midst of seeking to improve digital quality of life?
It's inclusive. It's not because in most of the European countries that did quite well in the areas of e-governance, e-security, and infrastructure, they defined their growth along those parameters. So if it's going to be a win, take for instance take for instance how people manage finances. For instance, you have an instance where people go and queue at an ATM, draw money, go back into the system to pay instead of doing the direct transfer. And the concerns they have are related to security in a sense. If you now put that analogy to having to access, provide as much details about yourself on portals that are not secure because of third-party hacking, and that becomes predominant because of poor governance issues of the owners of those portals.
Oh, well, talk about technology and the issues we have to deal with. We'll get back to Frank to finish up on that thing about e-governance, e-security, and how it will help. But we will take a moment and come back to look at, again, how to improve the quality, and then how to manage overuse of that digital space as against the loss of humanity. We'll be back in a moment. Just stay with us. Okay, thank you for staying with us. Frank, are you there? You are talking about... okay, so Amelia, Frank will still talk security.
Yes.
But this thing about the improving quality of digital life.
Yes.
And weighing it against the humanity, our humanity. Where do we create the balance?
Can I disagree with you that there's nothing like digital life, right?
No, but there's digital quality, though, digital quality of life. So,
yeah, digital quality of life, because digital is life.
Okay.
The balance. So first, there are a number of things that need to be done urgently. We need to significantly scale digital penetration. The last I checked, I think it was hovering between 12 and 16%. We need to significantly, all the peri-urban areas, rural areas, all need to get into, the way you say the tax net, or you need to widen it. Everybody needs to get into the internet net, or the digital net, as it were. That's so significant. Rural telephony is a project that should have been prioritized side by side with the growth of the telecom space. But I'm glad that, it's resurfaced, as it were, and it's become a front burner priority issue again. We cannot talk about sustainable development, as I started off with in the UN SDGs, without talking about access to information. So let's even leave internet and conference calling and all the social things, getting on social media. I mean, access to information. Access to information, maternal and child health. We just celebrated the fact that we're polio free. How do we get information across to the most excluded, most geographically obscure locations in this country? Rural telephony is it.
Okay, so the banks have started this USSG thing, so
Yes.
you don't really need to have internet on your phone to do that. But that's also part of
That's
digital.
where security comes in, as Frank was going to say. So maybe I'll just speak to it. So the challenge with that, and you still have our banking halls filled. You remember after the lockdown, everybody trooped to the banks, and threw away, threw caution to the wind, social distancing or those social distancing, give me my money. It's because there are too many incidents of cybersecurity and fraud in our banking system. It's too much. And I mean, I'm not going to blame the financial institutions. It's a multifaceted issue. It's beyond it. I know the Central Bank of Nigeria has certain initiatives with respect to that. But for as long as we do not think long-term about some of these challenges, as long as we do not find and engage and work with the best and the right partners, not about patronage, not about nepotism, but really about the best minds, the best experts, the best technocrats. And we do have them in abundance. If there's anything that we need in this country, we have. In terms of people, I know tons and tons of wonderful young people who are doing great work, even in cybersecurity, as we speak, But you can't talk about USSD, for instance, when people don't trust the system. Can my grandmother trust the mobile app?
Oh, meanwhile, let me just say this here. A friend called me the other day, an experience he had. Someone called him, gave him his ATM number, his password, gave him his bank account number, gave him the phone number he used to set up the account, gave him his email, and told him that he's calling from one of the banks, that he noticed that someone was trying to deduct money from his account, Did he authorize it? He said no. And I said, okay, so I have been able to stop the transaction. He said, fine, thank you. Now, the person that called this, my friend, now says, but just to be sure it's you, what is a certain
It's called
code
social engineering.
So what is a certain number, one number on his card or so, the last 4 digits on your card? Yeah, but you stopped the transaction already. Why do you want me? He said, no, I just want to be sure. And thankfully, he did not give that. Some other person, someone else has done that, and
that happens,
and they cleared his account
every day.
So the banks keep saying, we will not call you to give you your account number, neither would we call you to ask for your account number. So get into a banking hall to get that sorted. But when we started, in my opening, I said, how aware
Nigerians
are the people who use the internet space? A lot of people post a lot of things. They practically live on social media. It's a digital life. So how aware and what caution should they take? We're winding down.
Yes. So with increased access and with the benefits comes also the dark sides or the negative sides. And I think people need to take personal responsibility about their data. Data rights are fundamental rights, as we know. So the same way you would fight your hospital or you would fight your bank for letting people know that you only have 10 naira in your bank account and you're making noise on social media, as it were, speaking in colloquial terms now, is the same way you need to take responsibility about what you post and share online. And I tell people, your children, putting your children on social media, with the school uniforms, people can tell what your living room looks like. You are exposing yourself. No amount of advocacy from the financial institutions will stop some of these until people take personal responsibility. Social engineering is just a process where people use familiar terms and convince you to share important information about it doesn't just have to be your bank account. It could be anything else that puts you at risk, right? So people need to take personal responsibility and know that as much as the internet has a lot of benefits, there are people who are trying to take advantage of these benefits for their own, let me not say, selfish gains, and to, and to perpetuate crime and fraud. So that, and it's not a Nigerian problem, right? All over the world you have it. But with other economies where they've been able to, mainstream data and identity. That's the most important thing. So once we now have this federal government program that's on the national identity number, you can access information about people on the internet. If there's a crime, you can put in a number and database, and it shows data footprint. Once we're able to harmonize that, it becomes easier for the banks, HMOs, it becomes easier for every other person, to benefit. And hopefully with that, not that cybersecurity will be eradicated, it's not possible, but it will be significantly reduced.
Thank you so much. Emilia Asimita is a multi-sector strategist, and Frank Offem, who joined us from Ibadan, is a digital consultant, and internet was quite difficult. Access from Ibadan was quite difficult, so we lost Frank. Thank you again, and have yourself a beautiful rest of the day. Good to see you too. So as we'll be back for the home stretch. Her name's Tara, our artist of the week. Don't go away.
EJ Love, oh, EJ Love. Imanam Bergenaya, hey. I wanna grow so old with you. I wanna have you be.
Hey, pretty lady. You tell yourself that you will never make it. You drown yourself in lies and your illusions. Don't you know that what you think is who you are, yay? Hey, pretty lady, you tell yourself that you're not beautiful. Who told you all those lies that just deceiving you? Don't you know that you can be all you ever dreamed of, yay? God made you beautiful, said it in his word that you were beautiful. You go in places that you never dreamed. Said that you're the first, not the last. So don't believe those lies and those illusions. They're lies and just illusions. Yeah.
Tara is a veterinary doctor by day and singer by night. She started nursing her passion for music at a very early age, foregoing professionally in 2005. Some of the songs to her credit include EJ Love, Loving You, and others. She's recorded 28 songs, still date, and still working on more. She describes music as a universal language and needs to be put in a box. That needs not to be put in a box.
Yes, exactly.
And hold strongly. Hello, Tara.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
So you were born Chimata Ejubo, right?
I was born Chimatara Ihunayachi Aja Ono.
Chimata Ihunayachi Ajonu.
Yes.
And then you're now Chimata Ejubo.
Yes, please.
Okay. So Chimata, vet medicine, music. 6 years studying vet medicine.
Let's call it 8.
Okay.
Add ASU strike and all of that.
And so that's now like a hobby, right? Music is
well, I'd say that music is more or less a part of me, more or less like, when you call my name, music is there and all of that. So I wouldn't separate myself and music. So let's call Tara and music and then veterinary medicine.
That's why I said it's a hobby now. So I wonder how your dad would be feeling. I mean, his daughter studying vet medicine, and now she's put it on. It's now a hobby. Music is the main thing.
Okay, it was quite a problem. It was just recently he released me. He understood my passion and then let me go. Even when I got married, he would call from time to time and ask me, is this what you want to do with yourself? Why are you doing music? Why don't you focus on this? And blah, 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 But it's really important for us to know our calling, know your purpose, know what you're called to do. Because everyone was born for something. You were born, to solve a problem. in this world, yeah? So it's left for you to discover your passion and pursue it. You will not necessarily get support from the places you would expect, from family, from friends. Sometimes it looks like you don't know what you're doing. It looks like you're out of your mind. How can you say this is what you want to do? But just, stay on the path, that you've chosen. And, someday it will work out.
Someday. So, but you choose a genre of music that's not very common in Nigeria. Rock, etc.
Would I call it rock?
It's soft rock. If you want to.
Basically, or R&B, just Afro soul. I would call it Afro soul.
Oh, that's what you call
Yeah,
it.
there's an infusion of different genres of music sometimes in my music, and then I tend to infuse Nigerian languages, in my music. If you notice, EJ Love, Even Loving You, and some others that are out there. By the way, subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Okay. So while you're doing that, you made that choice and you chose to do, is it called gospel or gospel and inspiration?
I'll call it inspirational music, basically. It was more or less like pain turned into passion or purpose, yeah? Because if you listen to, words are very powerful, right? And you notice that if you listen to music, you'd hear some things that you don't really like, some songs you don't really like, but when they are played over and over again, you now begin to nod your head to the music and all of that. So there are a lot of vices that are being, taught or promoted in music today. And so you find the younger generation sagging their trousers, smoking the bowl, trying out the things that they hear in music because it sounds really melodious, So it was painful for me to see the decadence in the society and all of that. So what I did was to start writing songs, I would speak life, to counter whatever is in the atmosphere, what's spoken in the atmosphere. And songs that when people listen to them, they would learn something new or be inspired to be better versions of themselves. I would say that. Yeah, so
like the song you opened with, Hey, I think, what was the...
Pretty lady,
hey, pretty
beautiful,
lady.
yeah.
Okay.
Just a reminder that, you're beautiful. No matter who you are, where you are, no matter what circumstance you're facing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're beautiful.
Okay, so how do you manage to balance, because you said something when you got married, so obviously you're married.
Yes.
And how many children do you have?
Two beautiful, beautiful, beautiful children. I'm happily married. I'm 12 years gone.
Ah, that's a good one. Good. So how do you balance the family, the husband, children, vet medicine, studying, because I understand you want to go back to school, studying and music. Yeah. So that's like a lot of things to put on your plate.
It's basically being intentional about it.
Okay.
You have to make out time for what is important to you, So I'm intentional about spending time with my family, Sometimes I sleep late at night, like I'm a night crawler. 3 a.m. I'm awake. I might just be writing songs and all of that. That's my, most productive time of the day. And also, I'm intentional about it, and most times I have to pay the price. I have to sacrifice.
Really?
Yes.
That's a tough one. But okay, so tell us, so for you to write a song, at that 3 a.m. when everybody's like gone to bed, how do you go about it? First of all, do you just start with the words, or do you start with the strumming of your guitar, or how do you go? Okay,
so I'd say that I'm a believer, and that's when I do my devotions. First of all, it was weird for me, when I'll be praying, and spending time with God, and songs like that came, and they were inspirational songs, not like, core gospel songs and all that, even though I still write, for people, right? And so songs come when I'm in a prayer meeting or when I'm having devotion or something. Yeah, that's
and
and I just start writing and I just start playing. Yeah.
Do you get the words first? I'm just trying to picture you.
Sometimes you just hear the melody, and then the lyrics start coming.
Do you record it immediately?
Yes.
Or?
My phone is so full of voice notes.
Okay.
So I have to have my phone by my side every time, and then a pen and paper when I'm having my devotion. Very important. Okay. Very, very important.
So right now, if I was to ask you, you say you have like over 1,000 songs on your phone.
I have loads and loads of songs. Loads and loads of songs I've written down. I actually see myself as a vessel. Some of the songs I write, I step back and I'm like, am I the one that wrote these things? I know that, it has to have come from God, not me.
I hear you say you
Yeah.
write for others. So
Yes.
So
I
many
do.
of the songs you write are not necessarily for you.
No, they're not necessarily for me.
So when would you say it's most challenging for you as an artist and a mother? When is it most challenging for you? What is most challenging for you?
Well, creating the balance. Sometimes I'm just worked up. Sometimes I'm really, really exhausted, But I have to just go recharge, take some time out, spend, quality time resting.
Thank God for good husbands.
Yes, my husband is super supportive and I'm really thankful for him. He understands my journey and he's been really, really supportive all these years. Yeah, and I'm so thankful for him. So I take my time, I take time out to rest, relax, recharge, and then get back on track.
It's again amazing because we took our time to see some of the things you do on social media. You're holding webinars, live sessions,
Yes.
and you're still writing your songs. You're still having your husband and family to take care of and all of that. So what would you say inspires you to stretch so much?
I feel like time is short. Even 100 years is really, really short. And, my drive is that I'd like to die empty. That's my drive. Dying empty. Giving every single thing I have and every single thing I can that is within my power to do.
So you're already birthing other Taras?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Would you teach me to play the guitar?
I can if you want to. I'm available.
On live TV. I wish I could do that right now, but that's one thing I've been wanting to do for like forever. Learn to play.
But
the
you
guitar.
can't just take 10 minutes out of 24 hours and you're good.
If I take 10
every
minutes,
day, 10 minutes.
10 minutes out of this show now, and
Just place your guitar where you'd see it every time and then pick it up.
But I do have a guitar, and okay, we'll talk about that after the show. So Tara, what project are you working on now?
Okay, so I'm going to release something on the 1st of September titled Jars of Clay. Life is transient. It's really short. So it's a reminder that, the time we have is short and you should be the best version of yourself.
Did you do that within this period, this pandemic
Yeah,
period?
this pandemic period was the most productive period of my life.
So you're one of those who's praying you should stretch.
No, not really. But a lot of songs, I wrote a lot of songs during the pandemic and all of that. So this is one of them. And it will be out on the 1st of September.
Okay. Okay, Tara, we're going to be signing out briefly, and then we will let you do your thing, as in sing away.
Okay, so I'll just play my last release titled River Flow. It's all about forgiveness. It's important, you listening to me out there, to forgive and let go. Travel light. You don't really need all the load and all the hate and all the grudges. Learn to travel light in life and you'll go far.
Traveling
light.
Okay, we've been speaking with Chimata Ejugbo, a.k.a. Tara, who's a veterinary doctor by day and a singer by night, mother, wife, and she's working on some things. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Allow me a few seconds to end the show officially, then you would sing us out the rest of it.
So much.
Thank you. Okay, and that is our show today. We want to thank you for letting us be a part of your morning. It's been exciting. We've talked about different things, but we want to say this to you. It's in your hands to make today, to make you, to make your neighbors better. We talked about safety first. As you step out there, please be the best of you that you can be. Love your neighbor, love yourself. Be light. Reach out to someone, send a text, find out how they're doing, and please stay safe. If you mustn't go out, don't go out. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and we will see you again, same time, next week, Saturday. Bye-bye. We'll leave you with Tara.
rushing through my heart, and I can't seem to let it out. In my heart it's winter, in my heart it's winter, when we're in spring. Forgiveness, she's at the door, but I don't wanna let her in. She wears the sun, she wears the sun, she'll melt my eyes. Sun, sun, fill my heart, make my river flow, make my river flow. Oh, sun, sun, fill my heart, make my river flow for love. Cold, cold heart, open the door, spread your wings, fly butterfly. The winter's gone, the winter's gone, with summer's sun. Fly so low, your pain is gone.